Episode 166, Microaggressions You Didn't Even Know About. This Week in Weddings is a support group for wedding industry entrepreneurs.
We're the ones behind the scenes, planning and designing the event, arranging the flowers, creating the invitations, or taking the photographs for a couple's most important day ever. No pressure.
If you've been in the wedding industry for more than a minute, you know it's not all cake and confetti. Running a wedding business is hard, and it's certainly not for the faint of heart.
This Week in Weddings is where we catch up on this often crazy but amazing industry and share tips on how to be a better business owner, all while supporting each other along the way.
You're listening to This Week in Weddings with Kimberly Rhodes and Annie Roach. Hi guys, I'm Kimberly Rhodes, owner of Hitched Events.
I'm Annie Roach, owner of 5x7 Designs.
And I'm Lance Panton, owner and DJ of My DFW DJ.
Lance!
Hey.
Hey! It's not often we have Lance on.
It's always a good day when we have Lance on.
Today is the day. Hey, we're glad to have you. So, this episode, I gotta tell you, I think that we usually like our podcast episodes to all be wedding industry and all be business focused and not be social issues. But I don't think that's the case today.
Not to mention there's a little bleed over.
Yeah. True. Very true. Yeah. So this episode is with a friend of ours in the wedding industry, Amber Knowles. She's a photographer here in Dallas, but this got started honestly from a just email text chain her and I were on, talking about the state of the world and racial injustice and what we should be doing and what we should not be doing. And by we, I mean you white people.
And I am the token white person here. So please, I mean, I don't really, I'm here to listen and learn because, I mean, I try to, I myself, Kimberly, I speak up about things, but sometimes I feel like maybe I'm doing it wrong and I never, ever want to ever hurt anybody's feelings or insult anybody, but sometimes even not saying things, it can hurt people and insult people. So I'm here to learn.
And I feel like, okay, first of all, Annie, I appreciate you saying that. I will say you are more self-aware than 99% of people that I know. So I appreciate that.
And far from a token.
Anything.
I'll be a token.
But I feel like we're kind of in this place where, and I can only speak for the industry that I'm in, but where everyone is trying to do the right thing, but afraid of saying something wrong and not sure what the right thing is, or also realizing like after being alive for however many decades that like they just were not aware about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And so as I was like texting with Amber, just like between us about the world, I was like, you should come be on the podcast and we should talk about all of the things. Microaggressions, what that even means, what people say that they maybe shouldn't say. And then, of course, we're like, and let's rope in Lance because A, you have a male perspective that we might not have. Also, you were very much calm and a voice of reason. We thought it was nice to have a nice little balance.
You're not a voice of reason?
Well, no, but I can get a little fiery. Amber can get fiery. I can get fiery. I feel like you are always calm, cool, and collected.
Well, we'll get into this in the episode, but part of that is the penalty for me being anything else is pretty high.
Ooh. Oh, yeah. I get that. That was deep. Well, I'm excited about this episode, as excited as you can be, but I think it is good. I think, honestly, Annie, I feel like our podcast format, as like conversational as it is great for this kind of topic, where it's like we can all just like chat about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like personally, there have been a lot of scrutiny is not the right word, but a lot of hesitation to have these kind of open dialogues about race because it's seen as like taboo. Like we shouldn't have this talk. So I'm not going to talk about it. Like, I feel like that's how it's kind of been.
People, I mean, it's kind of been like a buzzword this week. Like it's okay to get uncomfortable. It's okay to have these uncomfortable conversations, but we should have all along been okay to be uncomfortable. You know?
Well, I mean, that's
Easier
true.
said than done.
Lesson learned.
Mhm.
500 years later, I guess. Well, our guest is Amber Knowles. She's a photographer here in Dallas. I've actually known Amber since like I moved back to Dallas and started my business. I think we met in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, at a Thursday therapy. So shout out to Michelle Loretta for getting that started, because that's how we first met, like way long time ago. And she's just my friend. And Lance, you DJ'd her wedding.
Yes, she is also a friend, and yes, I DJ'd her wedding, which was awesome.
She's a friend and client.
Yes.
Oh.
As the founder of the Amber Studio, Amber Knowles' artistic vision is to create joyful imagery of the diverse couple she works with. Her goal is to capture the real you, the real way you smile, the real way you laugh, and the real way you love. It's a bigger task than simply documenting your event. Her goal is to be your historian. And she makes it her mission to capture those happy, meaningful, and real moments just as they are.
You can usually find Amber at a yoga class or with a glass of wine in her hand. She is a Cali girl at heart, but will always consider herself a New Yorker after living in the city for 10 years. So far, she is loving her Texas adventure with her husband, Ed, and her cuddly pup, Miles.
Let's welcome to the show, Amber Knowles.
Welcome to the show, Amber. Thank you so much for joining us.
Amber!
Hey.
Hi. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. Before you got on, I was saying that you were like one of my very first industry people to meet back in the day when we first started our businesses and were Thursday therapying it up.
Yes.
Back in 2011. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, it feels like forever ago.
Well, before we get started, we always ask our guests to tell us their story and how they got into the wedding industry. So tell us yours.
Let's see. So I moved to Dallas in 2011. I had started shooting weddings a little bit before then. I was living in New York City. And when I moved to Dallas, that's kind of when I really committed to taking my wedding business, photography business, to the next level.
I actually feel like that's why we bonded, because I had just moved from New York. So I was like, oh my gosh, you used to live in New York? I used to live in New York.
Yeah, it was definitely the first time that we connected, was because of our what we had in common by living in New York.
So that was, you started your business in 2011.
Yes.
And have been shooting ever since?
Yes, ever since. Now that I mean, really what I loved about doing photography was I loved shooting weddings because everyone was happy, and I really wanted to capture that joy and capture just everyone being together. And so that's where I am today.
Amazing. I mean, I feel like not having weddings, like coronavirus, has messed up a lot of happy. I need some happy back in my life, y'all.
Yeah, for sure. I shot one of my clients who had to postpone their wedding to the fall. I shot their civil ceremony yesterday. So it was a little bit of joy that I was able to bring back into my life, which was nice. I appreciated that and them for having me there.
Well, just for the backstory of how this episode got started, Amber and I, since, I don't know, maybe the day after George Floyd's murder, have been texting, just checking in on each other and such. And I feel like our conversations via text have been like things that people are doing that are dumb and we need to tell them about. And that's kind of how this started. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm not surprised, but by everything that's going on, or the actions that people are doing right now online, but it's definitely been exhausting.
Yeah, for sure. And then of course we had to rope Lance in too. So
yeah, I all too familiar with the landscape, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we're talking about microaggressions, specifically microaggressions you probably didn't even know about. And I feel like this is just an educational episode for people to hear about. Let's dive right in, shall we? Where are we starting?
I know shortly after George Floyd's murder, and then I guess people trying to find their way to, show both their sympathy and support. I know my inbox just started to get some weird stuff.
Oh, yeah. And by inbox, do you mean your Instagram inbox, Lance?
Instagram inbox, screenshots of stuff that was public. So, basically somebody would see a post before anybody else and say, did you see this? I'm like, no, I did not. How interesting.
Like what kinds of things?
I think everybody began to rediscover their Black friends and colleagues in a manner that they hadn't viewed them before. Like, oh my goodness, you do own a business. Let me highlight you,
Yeah.
Forget that it's not February. You deserve attention.
So actually, I mentioned this on a webinar I was on earlier, is it really felt like, and I coined this from Amber. Amber said this is like wedding vendor reparations, because there has been this onslaught of like, let me showcase people I know that are Black on my Instagram story.
It's funny because I actually think Lance texted that to me. Did you text that to me?
Yeah.
Okay, so it actually came from Lance. I stole it from Amber.
Yeah. We actually talked about it on the phone, but yeah.
That is so funny. Well, it
felt like they were trying to right the wrongs of their past in a day, which didn't come across genuinely.
Yeah. That's how I felt too, for sure. In fact, I was frankly pretty pissed because and listen, I know I'm not speaking for all Black people. None of us are speaking for all Black people. And Annie, we know you're not speaking for all white people. I can just say that I was frankly offended to be tagged and highlighted, and not just like my company name listed, but like, let me steal a headshot picture from either your website or your Instagram and post it in my stories telling you to follow this business owner. If you are my friend, if I do business with you, if you have followed my business and have supported me, I think that is different. What I was honestly pissed about is being followed by vendors who I didn't know at 1:00, and then at 1:15 being the focus of their Instagram story saying you should follow Hitched Events. When, bitch, you weren't following me an hour ago.
Yeah.
So that's not okay, to be quite honest. And I, again, can't speak for everyone, but that's how I felt. I felt like this seems very disingenuous and more about the person posting than it is about me.
Yeah. Exactly. It's very much about them posting and them appearing to be diverse and inclusive, when in actuality their most recent actions, even not just the past, but their most recent actions show otherwise.
Yeah.
And plus the comparison would be the people that would, legitimately reach out to you via email or social media inbox and say, hey, I was thinking about doing this and adding this to it and your name and your photo, but I wanted to check with you first and make sure that was cool. So when the other ones would pop up, and even more so from people that you haven't worked with, and I'll take it a step further, for people that you have worked with but didn't mention the work in their post, it's just weird.
Yeah.
Did it seem like just awkward and forced?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think what hurt me most were local vendors who would smile in my face at networking events, but didn't even take the time to follow me in the past, and then take a headshot on my page and post it on their page as being one of their friends.
Yeah.
And then doing so, but not actually even hitting follow after they did that. It just it's insulting, really.
Insulting.
Yeah. And it's hurtful.
I do feel, I know I don't know for certain. I assume that it is not coming from a malicious place.
Mm-mm.
I assume that it is well-intentioned. However, being the recipient of it, it feels like you're being used. Like,
for sure.
I was feeling like you're using my picture and my brown skin to your advantage, not because you really support my business. Like, you literally don't follow me.
Or you
But
don't.
now you're
they might not
telling-
even
you're-
know who you are. I mean, they just see you as a headshot. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Annie,
But also,
no, that's a perfect way to say it.
yeah. And also not just that they see you, they're tokenizing you in those moments, but also that they're not doing the actual real work of learning to be an ally and learning how to dismantle everything that's happening right now.
Yeah.
I feel like I would maybe feel different if someone reached out to me, like sent me an email, sent me a DM that says, I've really admired your work and I'm trying to expand my network, as opposed to just and you guys, I'm not exaggerating. It's like I clicked like you can tell on Instagram when you started following me, you clicked follow because I got a notification. And then 15 minutes later, you're posting a picture of my face on your story telling your followers to follow me. Like, that is a bunch of BS. And it's shocking to me that people think that's okay.
And for me, a lot of that felt like charity. Like if we were in each other's face, like, oh, are you hungry? Let me reach in my purse and see if I have some singles. Oh, here, get a Happy Meal. I hope things get better. And it's like, there is a need, but the need is not financial. The need is not tangible in that sense. The need is more, we feel like we're out here alone. And, Instagram tag that's not the Band-Aid that's needed.
Well, I mean, an Instagram tag only lasts 24 hours. So you're just going to be my friend for 24 hours. You're just going to support me for 24 hours and then piss off. Like, yeah. I mean, just be an outsider looking in. Just that just sounds
like a
hurtful.
microaggression. Yeah. And if it had happened once over the last 10 days, it would be one thing, but it was like multiple times and to many people that I know. So I'm like, I can't be the only one who's feeling this way.
Yeah. And then, just to put a little humor in it, it's like all white people got an email at once. Hey, here's a good idea.
Amber, Annie, did you get an email?
You guys didn't get that email? Let me forward it to you.
We're left off. Just kidding.
Yeah, because they came in a flurry for like 3 days straight.
Yes. Yeah. And listen, I'm happy for the new followers. I've gotten more new followers in the last 3 days than I have in the last 3 weeks. Like, I'm grateful for that. That's great. I just don't like feeling like I am
Tokenized.
I was trying to think of a better word. There's no better word.
Being used.
Pimped out. That's how I feel.
And it's funny because there's historical reference in that too, and the way that Black people have been pimped out to build this country.
Go forward, please.
Yes, tell us.
Just in that we were brought over as slaves to build the economic foundation of this country. Like, we literally built this country. We built the White House. And yet it's funny that we see white people still trying to build off of our hard work. Interesting. I didn't think about it like that until just this moment. So that's a new revelation.
Yeah. And again, I think it's well-intentioned, but I think there's also, if I can transition, another microaggression that I also think is well-intentioned, but just not knowledgeable. I'm going to say it, and Amber, I'm going to let you jump in. You don't act Black.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Jump in. But you don't, it's funny because in a way, when white people are identifying us as good enough Blacks to show as their tokenized friends. It's like we're good enough Black vendors, but it's also like it's the same kind of insult as a you don't act or sound Black. I think it's like you talk well for a Black person. You have it shows their biases towards what they think about people who have skin tones that are different than theirs.
Yeah, like I've heard, and it's been a long time since this one has been an earshot, but it just says to me that it's probably still lingering somewhere. But social norms just kind of like put it to the back. Is he or she is one of the good ones.
Yeah. I had someone tell me this week that she'd be proud to, after I explained to her what I was so upset about this week. She told me that she'd be proud to have me stand next to her anywhere. A white lady. Yeah, Kimberly, I see your face.
Oh gosh.
What does that sound like to you? It sounds like, to me, the way I took it was that I'm a good enough Black to stand next to her.
Yeah, like you hit a qualifier that few others have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's hurtful. It's insulting. It insults who I am as a person. It insults what I believe in, and it insults my whole community.
But she actually probably thought she was saying something super nice.
Right.
Like
exactly.
she really probably thought she was complimenting you.
Yeah. She just thought it was a positive thing. Ugh.
Yeah.
That was her in-person tag.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I should be proud that a white person loves me. That's what it sounds like.
I've heard from talking with some of my friends of color that they've said before that they've hated when people have said that, oh, you're so articulate. Like a lot of people have used that term with them when like well, yes, I can talk. Like, are you trying to pat me on the back because I can actually put my words together? Like that they find that offensive.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's kind of to that point of your preconceived notion of what a Black person should sound like doesn't match what you sound like, so that you are a good Black person, which is real messed up.
And I think the other thing that's important to mention, as we record this episode, is that there are other non-white ethnicities that have similar concerns that can't really safely express them right now. Like I remember, I forgot the star's name from the sitcom Superstore, but last time there was a big
is that the America Ferrera?
Yeah.
Is that her name?
Yes. Yeah, I think you got it exactly right. The last time there was a Black issue of major concern, I don't remember what it was. She kind of jumped in and said Latinos have that challenge too, which she wasn't wrong, but socially her timing was horrible and poor thing got shredded. So as we're on this call, I absolutely recognize that, there are other non-white groups that have some issues that also need to be discussed. Unfortunately, no, the time is not right now, but just that we not, overlook that some of their challenges are similar, navigating their way through, the social system that way too many people have gotten used to and complacent with.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's also important to acknowledge that since we're in June, it's Pride Month, and that we can really all come together and support each other in different social justice issues.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Another microaggression that I want to throw out there to be discussed is the phrase, "I don't see color." Amber, I would love to hear your thoughts on that one.
When I hear someone say that they don't see color, to me, it means that, one, they don't see me because I'm clearly a brown person. And they don't.
I don't see you at all.
I don't see you. Everything's in black and white, literally. Yeah, no, you're not colorblind. We're not colorblind. But also that you don't see like what I'm going through and the things that affect my life on a daily basis. And you're choosing to ignore those things by not seeing color.
So I had an interesting conversation with my husband recently, who is white, for those of you who don't know. And we were talking about this. And he said, I feel like it is something white people say when they really just mean I'm not racist. And like, he was like, because I feel like that's what because you can't just be like, I'm not racist. He's like, I feel like that's kind of without knowing how to say it any better. That's the terminology of like, I don't see a difference in our value or our like equality, whatever. But when I was explaining that, like, but that you shouldn't say you don't see my color, because then you should be like, I appreciate your beautiful black skin. Like, I want you to see that. I think my skin tone is gorgeous. And if you say you don't see it, then I'm like, really? That's,
And I sorry, I think I have said this, you guys, and a
lot of people, Annie.
No, I really do. I'm looking back. I feel like I have probably said this before and I didn't even think about how hurtful that is, and I'm embarrassed to think that I've thought that before. Like not even reading into it. It's just that's insulting. I'm sorry.
But
it just makes me cringe thinking about it now.
But now you know.
But context matters too, and I think as a defense or a disclaimer, it comes off wrong. It is no different than, oh, but wait, I have black friends, or saying I have white friends. That's not a legitimate qualifier for anything.
It's hard. I have as most of you guys listen to the podcast, I have an 8-year-old son, Bryn, and my husband and I, we have been very careful with him and I think maybe we've been too careful with him to not even talk about different ethnicities. He just sees people. And I remember like years ago, I went to go and get a spray tan, and he's like, why are you going to get a spray tan? And I was like, to make my skin, tanner for this. And I was like, oh, do you want to have darker skin so you can be smart like Obama?
Oh,
I mean, that was his mindset. And I just was like, we've worked so hard. And the other day, last week,
that's sweet.
I had to sit him down and talk about it. And they don't talk, of course, like you guys say in February, Black History Month, they bring it up. That's really only talk about race. And I guess that's when he's only ever been exposed to the word race. And he was like, I was trying to tell him about current events, and he was like, but Mom, I thought Martin Luther King fixed it all.
Oh.
And it's like my heart broke, because I almost felt like I don't want to, I love his naiveness, but I also, as his mom, I've got to tell him what the truth is, and that breaks my heart.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we actually talk about race and say these words and say, he is a black person, she is a white person, because addressing those things means that we can actually address the issues that are affecting our lives and the things that are affecting the injustice that we experience on a daily basis. But if you never call it out and you say, I don't see color, then you're not able to actually address those specific injustices. And Annie, I'm not sure if you heard of the black talk that a lot of parents have with their kids when they're younger.
No.
And so growing up, I got sat down, and I don't remember what the catalyst was for this conversation, but my parents sat me down and explained that even though my skin is brown, well, they said, you're black. And my mom says that I said, no, Mommy, I'm brown. I was a child. And that even though I might be different than the kids in my classroom, that doesn't make me any less than they are. And to always be proud of who I am, because there are going to be people in my life, throughout my life, who will try to tell me differently and who will try to tear me down because of what my skin color is. Black kids have been having this conversation with their parents forever. for decades. And white parents have been avoiding having that conversation with their kids because race doesn't affect their lives. Their race doesn't affect their life. But if we don't actually have these conversations with the generations that are coming up behind us, I really believe that having these conversations is going to be how we actually affect change.
Yeah. And same in my household. And as a male, it's usually when we start to drive,
Mm-hmm.
My dad, my mom and my dad for that matter, pretty even tone parents, unless there was an issue. And I remember when the police talk came up, which was before I had a license, those instructions were so definitive from my dad. Like, this is not optional. This is not a lighthearted subject. Listen to me. Remember this for life. Hands on the wheel, get your license out and the insurance immediately. But by the time he's approaching the window to ask for it, it just needs to be on the dash or in your hands. And he said, if they don't know where your hands are or what your hands are about to do, you might have a problem that you can't fix.
I actually think, Lance, you're showing your age because that was the conversation then. Now the conversation is don't even reach in your glove box for your insurance. You need to ask permission to reach because they could assume you're reaching for something else. Like, I think the new 2020 guidelines or 2015 guidelines are even more strict.
I would think so. And I'm okay showing it. I'm definitely a child of the 70s, but it wasn't much different because my dad was like, wherever it is, he wasn't too strict on, whether it's your wallet, the glove compartment, or whatever. He was like, hurry up and get it. Because if your hands come back and they are visible, you're okay. If your hands are moving around or out of sight, you've got a problem.
Yeah. I feel like I don't have brothers, but I feel like my male cousins definitely had stricter guidelines and talks than me and my sister and my female cousins.
Mm-hmm.
I think Black men in America have it worse. Not that we have it good. not that Black women have it good.
You know what I think the difference is? Because so many discussions going on now. I think for Black men, because I don't know how much there is of a distance there is between injustices for Black women versus injustices for Black men, but I know Black men's are more often physical.
Yeah, maybe it's the more violent.
Yeah. The consequences of us making a wrong move are typically physical.
Yeah. But Amber, that's a good point about like discussions with children.
Yeah, there's a ton of resources online about how to talk to your kids about race. I don't know them because I don't have kids, but there's a lot out there.
And Sesame Street just did a little thing I saw.
Well, it's also like, I think I was being silent about it with my little boy, and now like learning now, like I can't be silent anymore. I've got to teach him, and I don't want to make him naive to it, but I also want to teach him, because if I don't teach him, someone else is going to teach him. And I don't want someone else to teach him. And I don't know what that person's going to say about it. I want to be the person that tells them that everybody is equal and in our eyes, and we do not treat anybody differently, and all, go over this, but there are different races out there. Because and I don't want somebody to brainwash him with something else.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think part of the problem, and really a big part of the problem, is that ill-intended people have made it that skin color becomes a qualifier. Like, oh, if you see this brown skin, it's going to mean this. Or if you see this person that doesn't look like you that's white, it means that. And that's just not the case. It's not a qualifier for intelligence. It's not a qualifier for anger or mood management. It's just a skin color. It comes with a story. It comes with a heritage, but it's not a qualifier on what that person has to contribute to the world.
And I also think that it's important to recognize that racism in the past looks very differently than racism does today. And that's where these microaggressions come in. Racism in the past was very overt, and that's what we learned was quote unquote racism. So like hate crimes and
like the KKK and burning crosses.
Correct. And like covert racism is really what we're experiencing today. And that has to do a lot about what we're talking about.
Right. And which is why I think George Floyd's murder was such a shock, because that was obviously overt and everybody saw it. And it was like, you know, for people that are just disconnected from certain sectors of the Black community, it was like, A, wow, that happened. And B, you say this happens all the time? Like, yeah.
Yeah. It's messed up.
Yeah.
I think I feel like social media has definitely opened my eyes to friends that I thought had the same beliefs as me, but they're totally different beliefs. And it's shocking to think these are, I thought were nice people, and they have these viewpoints. And I'm sorry, but if you have those viewpoints, you are not a nice person.
And let me tune in on that, because
Annie, I love it.
My curiosity is, like, I grew up in Augusta, Georgia, you know, and it's not Petticoat Junction small, but it's not Atlanta either. So small town in Georgia. As I was growing up, it wasn't hard. I don't want to say to know everybody, but it didn't take a whole lot to get around in that city and be pretty well acquainted. But for me, there are certain mannerisms and unspoken gestures that just, fast forward to now, it's nearly impossible to surprise me, because the only difference is social media, you know, where I'm seeing stuff that in different segments of my life growing up in Georgia, I saw or experienced in person, versus you, Annie, and I think even you, Kimberly, have mentioned that you've seen some things that have shocked you and caught you off guard. And I guess I wonder what was the difference in atmosphere, where some of the people that are surprising you and some of the gestures that are surprising you did not have little hints leading up to it.
I mean, for me, I guess my surprise only is that I'm going to use the social media example that has obviously gotten me fired up. To me, it seems so obvious. Like, it seems so obvious that posting my face when you don't know me or have never met me and don't even follow me is offensive. To me, that just seems very obvious, but it clearly is not to everyone. And I think that is what has been surprising. I'm using that as an example, but like things that seem very obvious to me as not being the right plan of attack has not been obvious to everyone. That's what has been surprising to me. It just seems really common sense, to be frank, but that's my perspective on it.
For me, I feel the whole like Black Lives Matter, why anybody is arguing against that. Like, why are you arguing against that? Why are you taking a stance against that? Like, I have, like, as a human being and as a person, why would you ever be against anyone's life? Like, that just, I just don't understand why that people are politicizing that and arguing against that. I'm baffled by that.
And before Amber speaks, and I think for me, going back to the word microaggression and, you know, the experience of growing up in Georgia, which was not bad. It wasn't a nightmare, and I don't have any horrific stories to tell, but keying in on the word microaggressions, typically for me, from most, I usually see something small that tips the hat to, oh, I feel like I know what I just saw. Therefore, when you go from covert behavior to overt behavior, I'm not shocked, because that microaggression slipped out somewhere prior.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with all this, with that, Lance. For me, a lot of it doesn't surprise me.
I know, Amber, you keep saying that. You're like, I'm not surprised. And I'm like, oh.
I don't know. I think it's because for so long, especially in Dallas, I arrived in Dallas from New York City, and obviously there are things that happen in New York City as well. We just saw Amy Cooper's video that shows that it's not as progressive as white people aren't as progressive there as you would hope, but they're a little bit more progressive here. I just found myself in a very segregated environment in this industry specifically, and getting out and making friends of other backgrounds has been more difficult than I thought it was going to be. In some ways, you walk into a room and I feel ignored, and not valued. And we are in the South. Let's not forget, Texas is still the South.
Yeah, I think also I grew up in Arizona and went to a very white high school and lived in a very white suburbia, whatever. I am used to being the only brown face in the room. That was like my whole growing up. When I moved to New York, the melting pot, like the idea of New York being a melting pot is so true and is so awesome, to be quite honest, because literally everyone is with everyone. And it's like you're walking down the street and someone's speaking Russian at the same time that you're walking down the street and someone's from Ghana. Like it is truly like people from all origins and who are getting to, maybe I just was in a fortunate situation that I worked with a lot of different people of all different races and ethnicities, and like no one cared. It was just a fascinating life, if that makes sense. Like it was just a fascinating place to be with different cultures, and you're getting to know people for who they are and learning about their history without it being like you're this and I'm that and blah, 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 like appreciating it, but not acting in spite of it.
Yeah, and I'm always surprised about people here who actually don't want to get to know other cultures and learn their backgrounds. Like I find that so fascinating and fun to learn about other people and other cultures. Like I don't understand how you can not want to know about other people.
I think it's a little bit, and maybe Annie, you can speak to this a little bit, but like I feel like it's because we think talking about this is like taboo. Like, you know what I mean? Like Annie, I'm using you as an example, just with like not wanting to like not shelter your son. That's not what I'm trying to say. But like without having that race conversation, or if like this is white and this is black and this is where this person comes from, without having that conversation, it makes it feel like we shouldn't be having that conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm listening to White Fragility right now. It's by Robin DiAngelo.
I haven't read this book, but I've heard a lot of white people talk about it as a like eye-opening book.
I highly recommend it. It's very interesting. She talks about how because race doesn't affect white people, their lives in a negative way, they've never had to address it. We have to address it all the time, but they can walk through life without it affecting them and out them having to address it. And so they're able to basically ignore it and put their blinders on, which I thought was a really fascinating idea.
And this is written by a white woman.
Yes, it's written by a white woman, and she's specifically is speaking to a white audience. She covers kind of in her introduction.
Something I would like both Kimberly and Annie to speak to are, I would like you to jump ahead of the naysayers that are sure to pop up in the comments that will debate and take issue with this not being the typical wedding industry topic. They in advance, probably upon seeing the title, will have their objections. What is your rebuttal?
Well, I'm going to let Annie chime in because she, of the two of us, is the one who will like call someone out in a second and I appreciate it all the time.
Well, I just feel that maybe these are not our people. These are not our people. These are not people that we want listening. We don't want these people in our tribe if they're not going to want to educate themselves about this. And yeah, we might not be talking about business, but I mean, I sure as heck want to learn this so I can, you know, make my friends and make people that I want to do business with comfortable. And I hope people listening to this are wanting to learn and wanting to realize, oh, I've made a mistake, but I'm going to learn from it and move forward with it, doing it a different way.
I will also add to that because there is a business perspective. I have heard some people who have said, like through hearing webinars or whatever, that talking about racial injustice in the world we're currently living in is not, quote, on brand. Like, I don't want to post Black Lives Matter. I don't want to take a stance because it is not on brand. I've also heard, I've heard people say, I have a, white clientele and an audience, and while I think Black Lives Matter, I don't know if they think Black Lives Matter, so I don't want to put that out there. And to me, I'm like, that's a microaggression. Yeah, let me throw up in my mouth right now. Because I also am like, if you don't take a stand, you are taking a stand.
But why would you want a brand that revolves around?
But this is real. This is real talk that I have had with vendors who've said this about other vendors. But have said yes, my friend said this is not on brand. And I'm like, that's awesome. If it's not on brand for you, I want you to not say anything about it because your business is not on brand with mine.
That's not on brand.
And I want to know
you never had a brand to start with. If your brand does not include everyone and you have a horrible brand. I'm sorry, but you do. You never had a brand in the first place. You had an unrealistic idea is your brand.
But I think it is true that there are people who do not feel like this impacts them, who are like, this doesn't impact, like Amber, to your point, this doesn't impact me, so I don't need to take a stand. And in fact, taking a stand could do more harm than good. I've heard a lot of people who said I've taken a stand and I've lost followers. And I'm like, good. I'm glad. You should be glad. Awesome. You are weeding out people who are not open-minded. And frankly, you should be happy about that. But not everybody feels like that, which to me is shocking. Amber, I know you're like, I'm not shocked, but it's shocking.
I'm not shocked, but I'm also at the point where I'm not allowing racist or covert racists to have a safe space around me any longer. They want us to play this kind of respectability politics with them. But really, my humanity and the humanity of my community is not a political discussion. It's not a political stance. It's just the right thing to do.
Right. I agree with that 100%.
And I am a television person to the core and watch a little bit of everything. And I definitely like news and talk formats. And to add to your rebuttal, before they get itchy, I have not seen Category the First not make this a topic of discussion. And not just one day, not just one little piece of special programming. It is just the thing to talk about. You're talking to somebody that watches news channels. I watch daytime talk. I'm talking regular news magazine style programs, Today Show, whatever, CNBC, Stock Market Financial Channel, ESPN, everybody paused regular programming and had thoughtful dialogue about this. So, don't turn your social media water gun our way and act like we're doing something that's out of step with what the rest of the world is doing, because that's not true.
I mean, I feel like every company I've ever followed, had a newsletter, bought anything from, has made some sort of statement and the ones that haven't, I've been like, that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've like Ben and Jerry's is like getting all of these new followers because they took a hard stance, and like that has been such a positive thing for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I posted on my social media the major companies that are connected to things I do, companies that stream music, editing software, DJ software, all of them boldly took a stance. Like, no, we're in this. Don't get it twisted. And, of course, people popped up in all of their comments like Heyman and Ha, and they're like, get over it. This is where we are.
I heard it was a webinar last week, and Kimberly, I believe, were you listening to that? I think it was Denise Lilly on there. She was saying that, like, I mean, once Corona hit, like, you got in your every single, like, you bought a piece of gum, and Juicy Fruit sent you an email saying, these are my COVID-19 issues. These are how we're going to procedures, how we're going to make gum, blah, 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 blah. You know how your inbox was hit with all that, but it's like right away, but it's like people are uncomfortable to have like, these are my new, like, how I've learned from what's happened these past week or two, what we're going to have, these new implements and with diversity in our company. No one's doing that. So that really, I really opened my eyes up when she said that.
And like, if you're willing to take a stand on this, why are you not willing to take a stand on that? No one knows what the heck
the coronavirus is. Like, but you can write a email about it, but you can't, talk about what's going on in current news right now.
Oh, and let me add to that. You know what else was that ridiculous? Website cookies and privacy. You remember when all those emails flurried out?
Mm-hmm. About the GDPR?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The new regulations, yeah. I think the bare minimum that folks can do is post something on their Instagram. If all you do is post something on your Instagram, I'm still going to look at you a little skeptical if I scroll down and I see no diverse faces that you shared previously. If you post something on your Instagram in support of Black Lives Matter, and also follow that up with actual action about how you yourself will proceed going forward and making changes and becoming an ally, then okay, I can support that then.
So I do have one thing to say about that, though, because I feel like for myself, I don't have a diverse clientele. I really don't. Of 100 and something events that I've done, I have had, I think, 3 couples that are not white. And so I feel like, because I obviously support Black Lives Matter, I'm a Black woman, you don't see that diversity in my feed because I don't have that diversity in my clientele. Not because I don't want it, but just because I haven't gotten it. So I just would caution us from being like, if you don't have Black people because you've taken the pictures and you're not showing them, that's one thing.
I think what I've seen of your social media has the balance of these are my clients, here's my work, and also here's my heart. I don't feel like that was excluded to include if somebody felt like they needed to do, a social media audit and scroll to the bottom and start counting, because it's not that. I mean, I think because your clients are who they are, and that goes for anybody, but I think you and others, separate of what their client list may look like, have found a place to say, to put it in mild terms, don't get it twisted,
Yeah. Well, I also think too, this is just my opinion, but I feel like, and I said this in an earlier webinar that I was on, this is not the time to be making sudden drastic changes, because sudden drastic changes, I think, reflect more poorly than small, tiny shifts. So for example, if you were to look at my feed and you're like, she does a lot of high-end weddings for a lot of white people. If tomorrow I was like, but here's another black couple and here's another black couple and here's another black couple, it would seem disingenuous as like, I'm just trying to now polarize these people and use their brown faces to show that I like black people.
It would be like me pulling out photos of guys dancing near each other to salute Pride Month.
Yeah. So I think there is kind of, I don't want to say fine line, but I think that whole like sharing on Instagram, I think it goes from like, I'm not doing it at all to I'm all of a sudden trying to do it. That seems inappropriate.
Yeah, it's not very authentic.
Yeah, and I would think, and this isn't to speak against Amber because I know exactly what she's talking about. I also think in a world where people really don't just check one thing if they feel like, well, let me dig in and see what this person really is about. They go everywhere they can find something. And I think as people live and how they live, shorter shows itself without effort. Like if people check me out all the way around, like my Instagram presence of all this, it exists, but it's light. But if you pull it all together and look at it, it's like, oh, okay, I see where he stands though.
I hear you and I understand that. But I do think that when couples of color might look at your feed and might see a lot of couples who don't look like them, they may not feel like it's a business for them. And that,
no, I totally understand.
That's for you specifically, but I think in general for how wedding vendors.
Yeah.
And
no, I totally don't disagree. And like to Lance's point, like if you were to go to my website and look at my portfolio, you would see people of color. You would see same-sex couples. Like you would see it. It is just not a high ratio.
And that's okay because that's math. I think that, and then again, being a friend and being someone that's seen your profile, there's a consistency to your aesthetic, which is the beauty of the wedding. Like, so 98% of your clients are white. Here's what you have not done. And not just as a business owner, you have not done this as a black woman either. You have not tried to exploit the couples themselves to say, hey, look, white people, here's a white couple, here's another white couple. That's not how your profile works.
Yeah.
Your profile says, here's the beauty of the work that I do. Sometimes the couple's included, sometimes it's not. But at a glance, it's not exploitive.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
No more than Amber, who has 98% black clients, exploits the black clients, nor the few non-black clients that she has. You just see the work.
Yeah, my Instagram feed will look the complete opposite of yours.
So. And I don't think anybody, and you've booked jobs to prove it, will go, Amber don't like white people. That's not what.
Actually, you know what? They probably do. I don't know. I feel like I've only had one white bride actually book me, and that was this year for a 2021 wedding.
And just the same, your profile doesn't look exploitive. It looks like this is who my clients are.
Yeah.
But you've intentionally made that like, here's who I cater to. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in the like.
What's your ideal client, right?
But I mean like your website is very much like, there's something in the language. I don't even remember because I was just looking at it recently. Yeah, your brand is very much like specific.
Yeah, my brand has definitely grown in that direction. I will say that when I first moved to Texas, when I started shooting weddings in New York City, my clientele looked a lot different. And when I first moved to Texas, I would have calls with white brides and they weren't booking me. I didn't know why, but they weren't. Then I would have calls with black brides and they would book me. And I would ask them why they booked me. And they said that they loved my work and they wanted to support a Black-owned business. And that right there those words kind of just blew my mind that I could find that type of support within my community. And it really is because of that type of support from my community that I've been able to grow my business in general. And so that is really the reason why my portfolio began to reflect the people that it reflects. And from there, I began to have a louder voice and being for and marketing to the people who were wanting to actually hire me in Texas.
And I would speak to the people that are concerned about on brand. I would really take a second look at the population that makes up Gen Z, because their thinking is just totally different. Um, let me give a spoiler that in this story I'm about to tell, it is a positive story. As I'm telling it, it may seem like, where's he going? But I had a bride recently, Asian American bride, white American groom. Guest count around 150 in that neighborhood. And on a bathroom break, there was another black guy that was a guest at the wedding in there at the same time. No, I'm sorry. This was at the end because of the detailed conversation we had couldn't have happened during. And he said, the bride, who obviously he called by name, said she told me that I would probably be one of only 4 or 5 black people at the wedding. She was checking to make sure, that was nothing that was going to catch him off guard. But then she went on to add, but I have a black DJ though, to take it a step further, so, know that you're going to have a good time. Here's how I translated that dialogue, which was positive. Gen Z knows that setting could be awkward because for a Gen Z person, that's not the norm. Gen Z is all about the rainbow. Let the protests on the news prove it. And so for her to take the extra step to say, hey, yeah, there may not be a whole bunch of people that look like you at the wedding, but you're my friend. I want you there. I want to make sure you have as good of a time as anybody else. So here's the heads up, because it's not like our regular Gen Z world. And it wasn't a, our Asian friends or our white friends outnumber everybody else. It's the wedding was mostly family. So you have her Asians and Asian American family and his white and white American family. And then their sprinkle of friends. And he was part of that sprinkle of friends. So Gen Zers look at this through a different lens. And the people that are feeling that solidarity is off brand might want to take a second look and a second analysis.
I mean, I kind of appreciate that people think it's off brand, because then I'm like, great, I know who you are and I need to not work with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, I don't care who my clients are. If you don't feel like you can take a stand or have an opinion, I do not need to refer business to you.
And just the same too, and not that this phrase is new, and I certainly didn't invent it, silence is permission. Your silence says, I'm okay with this. And I don't know if that's a message you want to send if that's not how you feel.
You mean if that's the message those vendors want to send?
Yes.
Okay. I thought you meant you, meaning me.
Oh, no.
I was like, oh, no.
No. And you haven't been silent. So, yeah, no, that definitely doesn't apply to you.
Can we we've talked about like things not to do. Can we talk about what people can do? Because I do want people to leave with some tangible, like, here's what you can do. Amber mentioned the book, White Fragility, as a good takeaway. I also want to say, and Annie, I am giving you a ton of credit because you are more outspoken than I am. And I think that what white people can do to be an ally is to be vocal. And I said this earlier on a webinar, but like, when you see people doing shitty things on Facebook or Instagram, like, I appreciate my white friends who will jump in and say something and like point out injustice, because to someone who literally doesn't understand what they're saying, I hope that they don't understand. Like, my voice is not going to have the same weight.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if someone is saying negative things or saying all lives matter, what are you talking about? Me, as a Black woman explaining it, does not have the same weight as a white woman explaining it. Period. As much as I would like to say that it does. So my takeaway, and Annie, I'm thanking you, honestly, is that having a voice is what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if y'all want to add to that, but that's my, because I feel like a lot of people are like, I don't know what to do. Like, to me, it's like, that's what you can do.
Mine would be communication. I had a concern with an action that was taken by a local organization in Dallas as it relates to their aesthetic, and a picture, that suddenly appeared in a prominent position out of nowhere, after there was a mention of an absence of pictures.
I mean, do you want to explain it more clearly? Because
You-
I'm
you-
totally fine explaining it more clearly.
You do it, and then I'll pick up the post.
Okay. So there is a local organization who had gotten a little bit of negative, for lack of a better word, feedback about the organization being diverse. And the next day, their Facebook profile picture changed to an industry event. It's an annual industry event. The picture looked like it was honestly the NAACP awards, because it is like all the Black people in this picture on the profile page out of nowhere. And it was just one of those going from one extreme to the next of like, oh, let's change our Facebook profile to show people that we actually have Black people at our events. It was one of those, like, to me, the whole tokenism, but just being unaware. And I think, Amber, when I say I'm surprised, it's shit like that surprises me, because like, how do you think that's a good idea? Who thought that was a good idea? You literally were called out for not being diverse. And so your answer is, we're going to change the fucking Facebook profile, show all the Black people at this event, and then that must be okay.
Now, so let me pick it up from
Sorry,
there.
my language. Now, Lance, you can take over, because that's the things that I'm so shocked by. That's what I'm shocked by. It's
What?
like, how do you not understand who thought that was a good idea? Please tell me who thought that was a good idea.
Well,
Yo, I'm
that-
getting fired up. Take my jacket off.
Well, here's the thing. First of all, you and I didn't feel any differently about that. That's number one. Number two, it turns out one person thought that was a good idea, and that was not a group decision. But I say that my answer to what people can do, what white people can do, what we could all do, is communicate. I sent a letter to the entire board. I wanted to make sure all eyes and ears knew my concerns. The very next day, I got a call from the president of that organization. And I can say that was one of the most productive and pleasant conversations that I have had since all this has started going on, as far as being a topic that's out front. And for me, I'll pat myself on the back for the email. I'll pat her on the back for the immediate phone call. And despite the crazy appearance of the picture, none of that would have happened if we weren't willing to communicate. And I just think that's such an important element as we navigate our way through this.
Lance, you always have such a voice of reason.
That's why we had to bring you on, because I was just gonna like rage, and I was like, I need someone else calm.
Yeah, for me, I think the most disappointing part about seeing that photo on their Facebook header was that we've been having this conversation, I feel like, for years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like, why now? Why now do they all of a sudden see a reason to put up a photo that quote unquote shows how diverse they are.
Well, again, and I think that is, and all of us are part of organizations, every single one of us on this call. And we all know how easy it can be for one person's action to have this horrible domino effect on the group. Now, don't get me wrong. The group has had diversity issues. They have until they address it. So the picture before it appeared, after it appeared, after the phone call, it does not take away from their diversity concerns. What I can say about my conversation with the president is that it wasn't a, oh my goodness, I really didn't realize there's just a lot of behind the scenes details that just really just had to be tackled head on. And these events, the email, having a thoughtful president, and I think other board members that will ultimately be supportive too, there just had to be an event that made it all come to a head, and the picture just happened to be it.
Right. I going back to Kimberly's point about folks like adding these photos to their social media in general, I think this is also very much related to that. And I feel like folks now are just seeing, I guess, how this is going to affect their bottom line. It's all back to economics, I feel like.
Do you feel like it's a little bit like too late now for some, like Brides magazine came out with a like top 100 African American vendors, wedding industry vendors, when for years I know there's been a constant struggle of trying to get people of color in there. I mean, it's like every single cover was, you know, a blonde girl, not, you know, it was just the same, like, you know, copy and paste. And now this week they come up with that. Do you just feel like it's too little too late? Or do you feel like it's a movement of change?
I definitely feel like it's a movement of change. However, I err on the side of skepticism, and I tend to hold grudges. That's a personal issue.
Oh, I got a list hanging up of grudges right here.
So personally, it might take me a little bit longer to, you know, go back to the other side, but I do feel like change is coming. And I hope that people continue just to speak up and to not make any safe spaces for covert racism. No, nowhere.
Minus the skepticism part, I would say I feel the same about the organization. It's like the conversation was an awesome start, but there's a long road to travel. But if the way that conversation went is any indication of the direction that travel is going to go, I feel pretty good.
I mean, I do stand by what I said before, and I think this all goes with it, is like it's being aware as a first step. I think that's what's important, because there was not an awareness at all, but knowing that you can't change it overnight. And I think the missteps are when people are trying to make these drastic sweeping changes overnight. It just seems disingenuous.
I'm in full agreement.
Amber, anything else that you need to tell us about before we wrap it up?
I think one thing that we should address is diversifying your life and what that means, and how diversifying your life will also reflect in the diversity of your work and who you work with. If you look around at your personal life and you don't see people of color, Black people, anywhere close to you, then you probably also won't see them in your work life also. So I think that's where when you begin to respect people of color personally, then I think you'll also respect their work as well.
Yeah, I said this in a recent like NACE newsletter. I think I don't have children, but I feel like because we know this is a long game, it is not an instant fix. It's like the children to like diversifying your children's group and who they are surrounded by early, I think also helps. Saying this not being a mom.
Yeah.
No judgment. I have no children. But if this
even,
is a long game, then it's like the next generation needs to be exposed early.
For sure. And even if it's even different things, like if you like to read fiction, choose books written by Black authors and people of color about Black characters. And if you like to, if your kids are in like a dance class or a soccer league, like look around and see how diverse those groups are, and make sure they are diverse if you're putting them in different extracurricular activities.
Good point.
Yeah, that is a really good point. I think too, because we're small business owners, for those of us who've worked for larger companies, having a diverse workplace is an HR issue that is often planned for, if that makes sense. Like companies are trying to have a diverse workforce, some. And I've worked in very diverse companies before. And then when you're small business owners like ourselves, there's not an HR department. There's not someone who's there's not a diversity officer. Like sometimes companies have this person whose whole job is that. We don't have that. So we have to do that ourselves. I'm preaching to the choir as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Annie, what about you?
And Annie, how do you feel? Do you feel like we've been beating up white people?
No. I mean, I think also, I mean, I know just personally, like I have been, and I'm ashamed to say that, like this past couple of weeks have been hard and they've been exhausting and a beating, and I'm embarrassed of that because like, as a person, as a the token white girl, like it's only been 10 days for me. Like
you're not a token. I can't let that go on the recording unanswered. You're not a token, but go ahead.
But I'm okay with that. But it's like these are problems that all three of you have been having your whole life, and I can only imagine this 10 days of really been, like I feel like I've been in the trenches, me like having to defend it, just me being the big mouth that I am, and I can't imagine having to have that stigma on you for your whole life, and it's opened my eyes, and I looking back, I realized I have said things that like I said, I don't see color and things like that I didn't even think was racist, and now moving forward, I will never use it again, and I will now be able to use this education and teach other people that why it's wrong to say that. Because it is.
But again, Annie, I appreciate that. I appreciate that you think you are going to make some changes. But I also appreciate, I have seen you like light up somebody on Facebook for saying racist shit. And then like screenshotting it and sharing it with all your friends. Like if you follow this person, you shouldn't. And let me tell you why.
Yeah. Like if you haven't had the pleasure of seeing Annie go to work, I mean, it's like kick the door down and then kick the desk over when she kicks the door down, like, badoo, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. But like, I feel like
that's how you become an ally.
Yes.
And not like not racist.
I'm privileged because I have that voice, and I'm alive. I have that voice. Like George Floyd is not alive. He does not have the voice. And I have a privilege to, I feel like I have a pretty stable head on my shoulders, and I feel like I have realistic ideas, but it's mind-blowing that I'm having to fight for what I think is common sense these days.
Give me your website, Annie, so people can tag you in there.
Every movement needs allies.
Yeah,
it does. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just hard. I mean, it's been I've been sad these past few days, and that is 10 little tiny days, and I can only imagine a whole lifetime of it, and 400 years of it, 500 years of it. It's just, it makes me sad.
Well, I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, it's an important and it's an important conversation, and it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to bring it up. It's okay to bring up an uncomfortable topic.
I will say, though, I mean, I'm glad we're having this conversation, and I feel like we have to. I got a call the other day. One of my Black friends who was like, you need to, we were like on a group text with someone who was apologizing to us. And I was like pissed. And he was like, you have to give them grace because people don't know. And like, I'm like, I know, but I'm tired and people should know this. And he was like, yeah, but we also have the benefit to be able to educate. And I'm saying that for everyone, white, Black, indifferent. Like, we have the ability to educate. I sometimes just go like, I don't give a crap. I don't have time for this. I'm exhausted. Figure it out. And that's not always the best thing. I will give you a good example of some time that I did feel like teaching and it came around. One of my girlfriends, white girl, sent me a text message and was like, I'm thinking about you. I want you to know I don't see color and I never have. And it was very like, I know it was well-intentioned. And I wrote back and was like, I love you too. However, I'm sad that you haven't noticed my Black skin. Like, I want that that makes me sad that you don't appreciate those parts of my being. And so we had a text exchange. And then several days later, maybe like a week later, it was like, I've been thinking about what you said, and I've been doing some educating myself, and I've been doing some reading, and now I understand why you said that to me, which was lovely to hear. Mm-hmm. But I think I could have easily just been like, ignore it. Like, you just didn't know any better, which is what I've done forever. You don't know any better. I'm just going to ignore it.
But I also think it's not your I'm here to listen and like I want to have this conversation, but it's also not your responsibility to constantly be educating us. Like we as I as a white person need to do my own research, and I need to I don't need to be exhausting you to tell me what's right and wrong.
Well,
I should know that.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. But I also am like, but if I hadn't said that and like pushed back on it, would you have done the research? Maybe. I don't know.
I do think that's fair in your personal relationships, but I also believe that since white people were the ones to build this system, they should be the ones that dismantle it. And they also should be the ones that, there's Google, there's so many resources out there. Like, why are they depending on Black people or their Black friends to educate them? I don't think that's fair.
Yeah. I feel like I don't want to make you do more work and make you exhaust you to when I can, like, I should know what to do, or I should figure out what to do.
I say there's a middle ground, because I think
always the moderator.
No, no, but this is a little different though, because I think where some people land on Google and feel like they've found a good space, it's like, no, you really didn't, and sometimes they need somebody to tell them that. Yeah.
I will say that I'm part of a women's organization here in Dallas. I won't name it, but the history of this women's organization is steeped in racism and classism. And I've had some hard conversations with the women that are in my particular small group, just bringing this stuff to their attention. But really, the first step is for them to actually, a couple of the other Black women in the group have introduced the book to them, the White Fragility book. And that's why I started reading it, because we're all book clubbing it this weekend, which I'm really excited about. But their first step is to actually read the book and do the homework, and not wait for me to excuse their quote unquote unintentional behaviors.
We're going to link to that book in the show notes so y'all can find it.
It'll be my first nonfiction book that I've read in a long time, Kimberly. Kimberly just makes fun of me because I never read business books. I only read stupid fiction books.
Well, and I only read business books, and
so she'll bring up a
get
business book,
little
and I'll be like,
romance drama.
what was that? I was reading some, Oprah's book of the week. Well, you were reading something that was probably educational for your business,
Well, I mean, I also need to.
Well, we
read
all need
something for
Oprah in
fun.
our lives, too.
All right, y'all. Well, I think we should wrap this up. I think we've said what we got to say. It's the longest podcast episode ever, but obviously important stuff.
Important, yeah. But thank you. No, I appreciate you guys letting me tag on to this.
Should we do a Facebook Live of this group? In our Facebook group?
I'm cool with it.
I think so. I'm always up for a Facebook Live.
Amber?
Sure, I'll join too.
Well, you heard it here first. She said yes. So we will do a group. It'll be the largest Facebook Live group we've done because we have not done 4 people at the same time, but we can and we will. So people can submit their questions and we can continue the discussion further. Hopefully there'll be less drama between now and whenever that happens, because if there's more to talk about bad happening, I don't know if I can take it. Amber will be like, I'm not surprised.
And I will hunt you down on Facebook and I will find you and I will write your name and keep and hold a grudge.
And I will be the voice
life.
of reason referee.
All right, Amber, thank you for being our guest. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.